I'm John Rodgers from Cuyahoga Falls, and today we're going to look at what I call First Trip to Europe. This was a Globus tour back in 1972, and I took plenty of pictures, but I wasn't yet into the slideshow business, if you will. And so these have been hanging around, and I decided this past winter I was going to put them to use. So this was a Globus tour, 1972. It was 29 days, our first trip to Europe. It was June 25th through July 21st. And the map that you see, we landed in London. Now, I do shows on the British Isles, so I'm not going to do that part. And then we flew down to Athens, Greece. And we will do all of this part over to Italy and up through Central Europe. And up here, we will not, at Travamundi, we went over to Copenhagen. But I also do a show on Scandinavia, which covers Copenhagen. So we will not do that part. We will come to Amsterdam and then end in Paris. And that's how we will work this trip. So first we're going down to Greece. That is the flag of Greece. We are in Athens. Notice the detail on the front of this building. And this is in the middle of the picture, looking from down low in Athens. That is Lycabettus Hill. It's across the city, but I want you to remember that hill because there's another shot that you will love that was taken from that Lycabettus Hill at night. And here is the Temple of Zeus, all kinds of temples around Athens. Here's a guard at the old palace, and that is the traditional uniform which they still use for the guards. And here from Lycabettus Hill is the moonrise over Athens. I gotta admit, I like that picture. And here is the Acropolis Hill. This was taken the next day, the next morning. We're looking up on the Acropolis, and that building that you see is the Parthenon, this building here. The Parthenon was built in 447 to 432 BC, and it was hit by a shell in 1687 and sort of torn apart, so there has been some repair work. As a matter of fact, you can see a little bit of scaffolding on the Parthenon there. Now we're starting up the Acropolis Hill. The Acropolis means hill of the city, and many of the places over there will have an Acropolis. But this is the Acropolis of Athens, and we're going up on it. Now looking down, we're up on the flat level of the Acropolis Hill, and if you see that cross right there in the middle of the picture, I'm doing my little dot around it, that is a place called Mars Hill. And the Apostle Paul, Christianity this is, the Apostle Paul preached at that spot. And here is another little temple of Nike Apteros, I think is the way you pronounce it, although some of these are pretty hard for me to get. And then here is an old theater, and I will not try and pronounce the name of it. But that's the plays were down below there, and you can see where people sat and so forth there. Now that is Lycabettus Hill between the columns in the Parthenon. At this time, in 1972, you could still walk in the Parthenon. You are not allowed to do that anymore. It's blocked off just to preserve it. But these are all shots, the end of the Parthenon, and then this is inside the Parthenon. Now, we're going to jump back into the United States for a moment, and we're going to jump into Nashville, Tennessee. Nashville, Tennessee has what they consider a replica, a true, as much as they know, a true replica of the Parthenon as it sits on the Acropolis Hill in Athens. But this is right in Nashville, Tennessee. And this place, this is called the Erythium, and that porch over there where you see the columns in the form of young women, that's the caryatids. And that means columns in the form of young women, and that's here on the hill also. And then here is the temple at the entrance as we go. You actually walk through that temple to go down off the Acropolis Hill. And now we're going down south of Athens. We're going down towards Cape Sonion, and we're going to a temple to Poseidon on Neptune. Here's a rugged coastline, and here is the temple. I'll show you this temple again after we get on the bus heading back up to Athens. But this is the temple to Poseidon. And that's the Aegean Sea out there, part of the Mediterranean. And interesting, this man standing right here, he is our tour guide. He is Austrian, and he took us on, he was with us for the entire 29 days. And we had a good time with him. He was really good. And then this is the view. We are on the bus now heading back, and the reason for the different framing of it, I got out some of the reflections that I had picked up in the windows of the bus. But that is the temple where we just visited, the temple to Poseidon. And back in Athens then, looking at the Acropolis Hill in the background, this is the temple of Zeus. And here's a fallen column. They just left it where it fell so that people could see how these columns were put together. Not necessarily one piece, but a lot of times they were done like this. And Hadrian was one of the emperors of this area, and over in Scotland you have heard Hadrian's wall, and that is the Acropolis Hill in the background, and this is Hadrian's Ark. And then from our hotel window, I don't usually do this, but that's we're downtown Athens, and if you look from our hotel window, I'm on a tiny little balcony, and that is the Acropolis Hill. We could actually see the Acropolis from our hotel window. Now, out in the out in the country outside of Athens, we're going over now to get a ship over to Italy. And this is the Corinth Canal. We crossed that bridge, and I really got a good one. I think we were allowed to get out of the bus to get this picture. And here is Old Corinth. Now, if you remember in the New Testament, Paul's letters to the Corinthians, this is the Corinth that he was writing to. And this is the view of Old Corinth from the restaurant. And I have this one labeled as field with 5 donkeys. One of them's laying down. But here's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 donkeys. But that's the field that looking out from by this restaurant. And here is the Temple of Apollo's area. This is part of it. These are all ruins at this point. And here's one of the old columns and an opening into the wall over there. And on this next one, I don't know where he stood, but I think that temple up on top is to Venus, as I recall. But somewhere right on, either in front or on top of this wall, that same apostle Paul spoke to the people of Corinth here. And then here is the temple of Apollo, all that's left of it. Now, we're going to leave Greece now, and we're going to go over to Italy. We have crossed over to Italy, and this is Brindisi Harbor on the east coast of Italy. And a little tugboat was there, and I like tugboats, so I took its picture, and it's still kind of nice. Now, this is the steamer that we came over from Greece on, and that is the bus that we will use all up through central Central Europe, all the way to Travemünde, Germany, where we would board to get over to Denmark. And here are some of the boats at Brindisi. No, I'm sorry, we have gone to the next town. This is the boats at Bari. Boats at Bari. We were at the harbor of both of them. But the ship had come in at Brindisi, and that's where we boarded the tour bus. Now we're crossing over to the western side of Italy, and this is one of you'll see these hills with a village on top, and you look across the fields, and some of those fields are vineyards, and I see some olives in there and so forth as you make your way over to the hill. Here's another one. There doesn't seem to be a village on the hill, but there's all sorts of neat stuff on the way over to it. And we're just crossing. We're not over to the mountainous area yet. We will be getting there pretty quick. And as I mentioned, I also try to get reflections out of my pictures if I can. And of course the bus was moving when I took these. You can see some reflections in it. And then a little bit more of the gorgeous rolling land, and then we get into the mountains of Italy as we're making our way across. Over on the west coast, there is what is known as the Amalfi Drive, and this is part of it. We're on our bus, and we found out later our bus was too big for the Amalfi Drive, but we went it anyhow. And these are from the bus on the Amalfi Drive. Now, if you go back from where we are and work your way back over this way, about another maybe 4 or 5 miles, you will be at Salerno. And Salerno was one of the invasion beaches that the Allies used to get into Italy in World War II. But this road just hangs the cliff, and it really is quite neat. I found out later that some people were really afraid on this, because many times you look out and you know, from here to eternity, but didn't bother my wife and I. We like heights and so forth. And so this is all the Amalfi Drive, and what you're seeing down in this little pocket are vineyards stretching over towards the buildings there. And there are the mountains behind the drive. You can see a lot of terraces in this picture, and a lot of those are vineyards as well. All kinds of neat little buildings as you make your way along. This kind of picture bothers some people. You know, you have to be up at the edge looking almost straight down, but no, it's a neat picture. And then in Amalfi itself, this is the horse carriage in the foreground. You could rent those if you wanted to, and the various houses and all. A lot of, in the olden days, a lot of women's shoes were made here in Amalfi. Italian-made Amalfi shoes for women. And this is one of the churches in Amalfi. This one I call back on the drive, hanging houses. Yeah, it's quite a drive. Now, we have gotten off the Amalfi Drive, and we are going towards Sorrento. And those things that you see in the middle, these are bird houses. I don't know whether they raise the birds to eat. Perhaps they do. I have to point this out to you because this is as close as I've been. But many of you have heard of the Isle of Capri, and that is it, back behind this ridge. That is the Isle of Capri, and that's as close as I've been to the Isle of Capri. So anyhow, let's go on. Here is Mount Vesuvius. Now, we're in Sorrento now, and that is Mount Vesuvius. Mount Vesuvius isn't all that high, 3,842 feet. But back in AD 79, Mount Vesuvius erupted and destroyed Pompeii, where I have you now. That is Vesuvius in the background, and this is Pompeii. Here's a sacrificial block and so forth that people, one person is on it, and there are the mountains in the background. There's one of the streets in the old Pompeii. See, this was completely covered with ash after the eruption in AD 79. So the ash all had to be taken out. And all of these years later, this was in one of the homes, and here is a painting that still has most of its color from way back then, having endured the effect of the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Some of the earthenware. Now, I don't think it was found just like this. It was gathered and put here. And then mosaic floor is still there. Mosaic floors, if they're done right, can stand a tremendous amount. And so that is Pompeii. And now we are going on up towards Rome, and we pass a place that figured in fierce fighting in World War II. And up on the heights there is Mount Cassino. Really a tough place for World War II soldiers to have taken. Another town on a hill, some vineyards and so forth as we make our way up towards Rome. Now, I found this picture, and it is not mine. I have been in the Pantheon, and you will see my picture inside. But I wanted to show you this because one of my favorite people is Thomas Jefferson, and he used the Pantheon, especially that dome, as the model for the rotunda in the library at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, because he did the work there. But this Pantheon was built in 118 to 128 AD. The dome is a half sphere, 144 feet in diameter, and here's my picture inside. It was commissioned by Emperor Hadrian, and Jefferson used it, as I mentioned, as the model for the University of Virginia. Outside again, this is part of what is known as the Roman Forum. It's mostly in ruins, but you see a pretty good arch in this picture of it. And then the Colosseum. The mighty Colosseum, where you went to see wild beasts eat people and all kinds of weird things. This was built in AD 71 to 80, and it held 50,000 people. There's a little closer here, and then inside of it. So you took your seat and you watched the lions tear apart the Christians or something of that nature. It was all kinds of gory stuff done here in the Colosseum. This is the Arch of Constantine. Boy, that is really massive. And then going over to the Basilica of St. Peter's. This was 1506 to 1667, and the dome was designed by Michelangelo. Now, St. Peter's outside, okay? And then the next picture I was supposed to show you was the Pieta by Michelangelo. And I am now showing it to you. But I am showing it to you from the New York World's Fair in 1964-65. And it was not in St. Peter's because about 2 months before we got there, someone had worked it over with a hammer, and it had not yet been repaired. It has since been repaired, and I believe it is back there. But this is from the New York World's Fair, Michelangelo's great sculpture. And you will see some other Pietas as we get up to Florence, done by Michelangelo. Now, here's the inside of St. Peter's Basilica. And then looking out, I can't remember whether I walked out in front or whether I took this through a window. This is the square, St. Peter's Square there. And then going into the Vatican itself, this is a painting towards the museum. And these are paintings on the ceiling as we're going down that walkway. Looking out at the courtyard and all kinds of looking out the window first and then the courtyard. A lot of cars in there. And then the Sistine Chapel. Now this flash doesn't do you any good. I don't use much flash anyhow. But this is the Sistine Chapel that was so well known. And here is a little bit more still in the Sistine Chapel. You're free to take pictures, but they're really hard to take. And here's a circular stairway that I really liked. I thought that was very well done. And then as we leave the Vatican, here is the wall of the city. See, the Vatican is distinct in itself within the city of Rome. Now, if you want to go to 3 coins in the fountain, here you are. This is Trevi Fountain, and this is where you throw your coins in and you return to Rome. I threw one in, but I have not been back to Rome yet. Maybe I ought to investigate that a little bit. The great Victor Emmanuel Monument. Victor Emmanuel was proclaimed King of Italy in 1861. This memorial is to him. And here's a fountain and a statue right by that memorial. And then one of the columns, there's several columns to Trajan. Trajan was an early emperor, I think in the 1st century in Rome, and that is a Trajan column. I call this Stature and Rooftops. I guess that's as good a name as any. And then one more of the Roman Forum. As you're looking out from, I'm up kind of high at this point. And a few more of Rome. Here's the altar in chains in the place called St. Peter in Vincola. This refers to the apostle, St. Peter. And then the statue of Moses, and this is by Michelangelo also. Now we will leave Rome and we are on our way up to Florence. And some of the neat fields on the way up. And now here is Michelangelo's statue of David, and he did not use fig leaves, and here is how I took it in when I was in Florence. And I mentioned that you would see some other piazzas, and this is one of them. I'm not sure who the person is there, and I think there are a lot of different stories about who it represents, but there were several piazzas done by Michelangelo. And this is the baptistry, the golden doors of the baptistry. And then in this Duomo of Florence, which was built in 1296 to 1461 AD, you can tell at that roof back there that this is the dome and the front of the cathedral. And then this is a closer one of the front. And then here is the altar there at the Duomo of Florence. And here's the cathedral at the square. Yeah, look at the tour buses in front of that. And this is the Piazza del Signora, and I believe that's a statue of Neptune there. Yeah, a Neptune statue. And the Arno River, that's the one that runs through Florence. And since we were there, this river went into flood all the way up and over into the city of Florence itself. Like some of the devastating floods they've been having in this year of 2005 over in Europe. And this is the Ponte Vecchio Bridge. And this is a bridge. This is an actual bridge across the Arno River, and it's got little shops, two or three levels of little shops going across it. It's an interesting bridge to go across, and this is if you look closely, you can see the mountains rising in the background as the Arno River flows by. And now we're on our way up to Venice. That's where all the water is, and here's the hills and fields and houses on the way to Venice. But here's this, you take what's called a water taxi there, and we're on it now. This is a view of one of the canals from the water taxi. And then we got off at St. Mark's Square. Now, St. Mark's Square is noted for pigeons, but there weren't too many there that day. And here's part of the St. Mark's Cathedral here. And going in, the altar of St. Mark's. Boy, that really has the statues and everything in it. And I don't know where this painting is. I think it's outside on St. Mark's. And then going back some, a full view of St. Mark's. I think that painting is right there. And this is where you have all the canals and bridges and so forth. And this bridge is called the Bridge of Sighs, because you have received you have been tried and you received a penalty, and you cross this to start paying your penance, and you sigh, and so it's called the Bridge of Sighs. And yes, we did go on a gondola, and we'll be there in a moment, but here are some of the gondolas at their docks. And here's some gondolas looking across the Grand Canal to a cathedral across there, and if you look to the right, you will see a military ship, a Navy ship, because you can see two of the rockets poised for liftoff, if you will. And then this is the Grand Canal, and that is the Rialto Bridge. And that bridge goes back to 1591. So it's been around a while, the Rialto Bridge. And then here's part of our group in their gondola, leaving, and the man on the back, and this is he, He is. This is our man here, and we are going on a trip. And you know, on one of the gondolas in our little group, they had a wonderful male tenor, Italian tenor, and he sang, and boy was he good. He was really neat. Okay, mountains in northern Italy, because we're heading up to Austria, and specifically to Vienna. So here's some mountains with snow, and the countryside. Pretty stuff on the way up. And then here is Vienna from our hotel. Now, I'm going to point it out right there, that little circular thing there. That, at the time I took the picture, that was the largest Ferris wheel in the world. I doubt if it is anymore, although they go in more for roller coasters here in the States than they do Ferris wheels, so it's a good big one. And we were later on it, as a matter of fact. And then notice, I wanted you to see right in the middle all the statues on that building. That really is something. I don't know what the building is, but it really was something. There's the Maria Theresa statue right in the middle of town. And here is a part of one of the Habsburg palaces. And out in one of the city parks is a statue in honor of Mozart. Of course, we're in Vienna. And then here is the Parliament building. Now, also in this area is Schönbrunn Castle. Here's the castle from the outside, and then let's go in. I have a few views inside. That one, and you can also look out the windows, and I take pictures out of the windows when I'm inside. This is the main thrust of the gardens here at Schönbrunn Castle in Vienna. But here's some paintings inside. And then my wife likes chandeliers, so I've made a habit of taking pictures of chandeliers. And then here, I don't know what the occasion was, but here's a hall full of chairs ready for something. And looking out one of those windows off to the right from those people is a little bit more of the gardens. Now, further on, but not too far, is another castle. This is part of it. This is called Belvedere Castle. The horse statue in the front here, and here is one of the side gardens of it. Now, I have to explain this next one. Remember, we aren't all that far away, and we had an Austrian for a leader. And this statue is of a Russian soldier, and they call it locally the statue of the unknown plunderer, because Russia was stripping everything they could out of Vienna at the time, and then this was put up in honor of them, and they never honored them at all. Then when we left Vienna, we didn't leave by bus, we left by a boat on the Danube. Now this is probably out of date, but that boat that you see, and the reason for taking the picture of the boat, that is a hydrofoil. And there were very few hydrofoils around in 1972. There are quite a few more today, and we have since ridden on a hydrofoil, but that was the reason for the picture. But there's all sort of beauty along here. I call this the town and castle. The castle up on the hill and the town down below. And you will see as you go along here, vineyards and so forth. This is an Austrian couple with their kids that we got to talk to, and they were quite interesting, and they did English. And this lady right here is my mother-in-law. She was with us on this trip, and she has since passed away. I think I can show you one of her, a better one in Berlin, and I will. And one of the towns, and stretching up on the hills, and a church and so forth, all kinds of things. And this is the Danube River. And vineyards and castle. Oh, look at the vineyards going up the terraces going up the hill. I think all of that is grape. This was a nice trip. And then when we finally landed, I actually got a picture of the steamer. Now, the steamer was such, see that angle on that stack? That stack can be lowered down so it can go under bridges. And they did that. At least once. And then, while we were right in that same area, I got a picture of the Abbey at Melk, M-E-L-K, at Melk. This abbey was built in 1702 to 1740, and it's featured quite a bit when you're talking about Melk, and especially the Danube. And we're going to be heading over towards Salisbury, a country scene looking over towards there. Salisbury is still in Austria, and this is the castle on the hill there. You're starting to think, hopefully, of Sound of Music. And here is one of the monuments there. And this fountain is shown in Sound of Music. And a little shop window. And the town square, or part of the town square, I should say. And then the castle on the top of the hill is where the music festival is held. And this was a scene in The Sound of Music also. But what I want you to see is the beautiful gardens. There's the castle up on the hill, and these are some of the gardens where the children sang and danced in Sound of Music. Out in through here. These pictures were taken early in the morning, so there's nobody around, which is a nice time, but I don't like to get up that early. But out here you can picture Julie Andrews and the children singing in Sound of Music. And now we move over, still in Austria, but to Innsbruck. I don't know why it's so famous, but that is the golden balcony roof that is supposed to be famous. Look at all the people under there. And here is a street scene there, just really fascinating sort of stuff, just to walk through some of these old European towns. And a garden here in Innsbruck, I don't think that was related to anything big. It was just a nice park. But here is a palace there at Innsbruck. And now we're going to go across to the little duchy, I think it's called, of Liechtenstein. This is a house in mountains just before we get to it, and we have to go through it in order to get into Switzerland. And here is a house on the top of the cliff. That is in Liechtenstein. And this town with the clouds and mountains is in Liechtenstein. And Liechtenstein is so small that it uses the passport and checking of people entering. They uses the facilities of Switzerland for that. And then this hillside is actually in Switzerland. So we will be in Switzerland for a little while. And nice and green, isn't it? Lake and mountains, and mountain lake and towns, and all kinds of neat stuff. We're making our way over towards Luzerne. We will not be spending the night in Luzerne. We spend the night in Giswell, south of Luzerne. And here's a little bit of Lake Zurich. that you can see coming in around that town in the background. And then a little bit of the, this is a cogwheel locomotive, and they say it's the oldest in the world, but I'm not sure, so I put a question mark on that. We are in Luzerne now. Tower on the old wall, and I'm looking from a bridge here, and I'll tell you more about that bridge in a moment. We will be going into it. This is a view of the bridge, and inside it looks like this. Now you have to look up, and it's fairly dark above the people's heads, and you see all kinds of paintings and stuff in this bridge. And here's the front of it as we had entered it. House and tower and so forth. And then something that gets glossed over quite a bit. This is the Lion of Luzerne. The statue that you're seeing was made in Copenhagen, up in Denmark. But what this does, you see the shaft in the lion, the shaft of a spear in the lion, and the lion is actually dying. And this is the shield of Switzerland. This commemorates the massacre of the Swiss Guard, who had laid down their arms as ordered by Louis XVI during the French Revolution. It took place in Paris in 1792. And see, royalty in Europe would only allow themselves to be guarded by Swiss guards. And so Swiss guards were all over Europe. And he asked that they lay down their arms. They laid down their arms at his request, and the mob massacred the Swiss Guard. And this commemorates the Swiss Guard as the lion, and the shaft in the side as what happened to them when they were massacred. Very meaningful statue down in a little park in Luzerne. All kind of neat little statues in the store window. That's that bridge again and the tower behind it. Notice the swans also, there are quite a few there. You have the old wall and the tower around it. And then I got up high somewhere, I don't remember exactly where, and took this picture looking down on the town. We were going to go over to Mount Pilatus, but it was so foggy they weren't actually running, and that is it behind the boat there, so we never got to do that. But here is the lake, and then we were going, as I mentioned, up to Giswell for the night, and this is Giswell Mountain in the background here. And they had a get-together that night in the little tavern, I guess they call it there. And one of the things that they did, besides feeding us cheese on fresh bread, this is melting cheese with the flame of the fireside, they did the blowing of Alpen horns for us. And I'd never heard it, and never heard it quite so close, anyhow, right here in Giswell. Right, and we were staying within walking distance of there, and this is right behind our hotel in Giswell. And as we were leaving Switzerland, this is a strange formation for a slide, but I had to cut a couple of things out that weren't supposed to be there, and this is just a little bit by Zurich. As we made our way over to the Rhine Falls, that at Schaffenhausen, and this is, we're going into Germany now. And I have two pictures of the Rhine Falls here as they come roaring down the Rhine. As we're making our way over to the little walled city of Rothenburg, Here is another one of the Habsburg castles on the way. Now, I will keep going fairly fast through Rothenburg. It's a beautiful little walled city, and I took most of these pictures in early morning, so you don't see too many people. But it's just a wonderful little town, and it's just worth walking around to see it all. And I'll just move on through it. A couple of things I'll show you. How do you like that house? That's a neat one. And then I have to show you something here. No, not that one. I guess it's another one. Oh, here's the one. The bedding. The bedding is in the window to air out before they make up the beds for the day. That was kind of neat. These signs are really well made, and they're really quite outstanding. That's one by itself, and here's a sign with a street going down. And you see that tower all the way in the background. Now this is the square, and they have different activities here, usually, a lot of times I should say, at night. And this is a street leading off from the square. Here's some of the buildings of the square. Notice the church in the background with scaffolding. It's being repaired. A lot of churches across Europe at this time were being repaired. And this is a steeple, a lamp, and statues high up. Just a beautiful little town, just really neat. And apparently it came through World War II okay. Now this is where we first entered it the night before, right through that opening. We stayed in a little place just on the outside of the wall, but a lot of us went in and walked into the square that night. I'm up not on the wall, but I'm up by the wall looking down to the bridge, which is sort of misty the next morning, and that is the road we will take leading out of Rothenburg. And if you've only seen one picture of Rothenburg in your life, it's probably this one. The road going down, the street going down on the right, and the opening through that tower straight ahead. And here's one last one of the square. And we're going to go over the West German countryside. Those are all sheep down there. A lush green scene here. And then looking back to Rothenburg, that town over there, not all the way over to the right, mostly over to the left is the little town of Rothenburg. And then as we make our way over towards East Germany, this is another town. Now, as we enter East Germany, remember, the Berlin Wall was still there. The Iron Curtain was there. This was 1972. You were going into hostile territory. There's the Elbe River and the power plant. This is in East Germany. And here is the Iron Curtain. See the fence is here, the lights are here. This is some of this is plowed ground to make it very difficult. And when you go on a little bit further, you can see There's the fence, there's the plowed ground. Here is a guard tower, and they had machine guns pointed at us from the guard tower as we made our way into West Berlin. Now, West Berlin was free. East Germany and East Berlin were not. They were very much under the communist, the Russian influence. Really, the East Germans had become more or less like that. Here are public buildings, and then here are bombed out buildings from World War II. And here is the Berlin Wall. Now, at the point where I am, you could go up on a platform and look over the wall to see the tank traps in the foreground and so forth. But there, I don't have it in this picture, but off to the right was a guard tower, and they had guns pointing at us. And here is, this is just an awful picture. What has happened? They have torn down all the other three sides of this house, and the front of the house becomes part of the Berlin Wall. And it is all bricked up or concreted up or so forth, and it becomes part of the Berlin Wall, a house. And here's Checkpoint Charlie. You might remember that from back in those days. This was one of the major points of getting between West Berlin and East Berlin. I never got over to East Berlin. I never had any desire to get over to East Berlin. And here is a memorial, and those are two Russian guards for that memorial. And in the downtown of Berlin, that is a bombed out church. They said at the time they were going to leave it there as a reminder and as a memorial, and I wonder if they ever tore it down or whether it is still there today. And this is the John Kennedy plaque. This was because of his creation of the Berlin airlift that actually saved West Berlin. And I mentioned that I would show you my mother-in-law again. I can't show you her face, but that is her standing there looking at the John Kennedy Memorial. I have no information on this stag monument and fountain. It's in West Berlin, and I liked it, so there it is. And then in a West Berlin museum, I have two paintings. This first one is by Howells, and these probably belong over in Belgium, the Netherlands, somewhere over there. They were probably taken by the Germans during World War II and brought over here. And then from the house roof, the hotel roof, here is a picture of West Berlin at that time. You don't see any bombing damage in this particular one. What you see out here has all been apparently repaired. And then going on north out of Berlin, you come to the town of Lübeck, still in Germany. And I've never seen anything quite like this for the entryway of a town. But the gates in the tower are really something. And here's an old house in here with a balcony. The reason for taking the picture is that is an old house with the balcony on it. And steeples across the river here as we make our way in and around Lübeck. And then I got an unusual building on the square. And that is really an unusual building. And here's a little bit more of it up at the higher part. And now, here is the place where we're going to leave the tour for a little bit and let it go on over to Denmark. This is the harbor at Travemünde. You know, I can't find Travemünde on the maps anymore, but it was the northernmost city in Germany at the time. And just off to the right out of the picture, not more than a mile or two, is the Iron Curtain. But notice the old schooner there, and here is the town of Travemünde, and now we're going to go over to Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and here is the canal. My wife and I were talking the other day about little houses, and I've never seen one any smaller than that one in Amsterdam, and anywhere. And this one is in Amsterdam, and we're on a glass top canal boat. This one here on, this is the cat boat. This is loaded with cats. They gave us a figure, I don't know how many, dozens and dozens of cats live on that boat. I wonder how many of them, or if any of them, are still there. Now we're still on our boat touring the canals of Amsterdam, but we have come out to make a turn, and this is a dry dock, and you can see a ship is in that dry dock. And here's another church being repaired in the background, still all over Europe. And here's the glass top boat that we were in making this particular tour, and one more of the canal itself as you go around. We went into the Rijksmuseum. We spent a good bit of time in there, but this is one of the paintings. But the most impressive one to us is the Night Watch, and this is done by Rembrandt. This is considered one of the greatest paintings in the world. Also in Amsterdam, they have a pedestrian street, and this is sort of the entryway off of it, and then here's a street scene down that pedestrian street. And the square right in the middle of Amsterdam is called Dams Square. And you can see it was loaded with people at that time, mostly young people, probably walking or hiking or hitchhiking around Europe at the time. And as we're making our way over to Brussels, yes, windmills are still there, and they are used. And here's the Rhine River as it's passing to make its way over off to the left towards Rotterdam. And remember, we saw the Rhine River at Schaffhausen before. And over at Brussels, they have their World's Fair symbol still in place. And they have an Oriental building, still part of the old fairs, and then a view of the city. And I must have taken this from our hotel, looking out over the city, and the spire of the town hall, and a guild hall on the Grand Place. Now that's a little fuzzy, but the bus was moving at the time. Now I was standing where I took this next one. A father had lost his little boy, and he said that he would have a statue made of whatever the little boy was doing when he was found. So guess what the little boy was doing? He was going to the bathroom. And that statue is still there in Brussels, and you can see it, and that's the father's tribute to finding his little boy. And then this will not come into focus or anything, but this is called the Golden Square at night. And I wanted to show you the brightness of it. It really is something. It really is. It is really bright. And the little boy is just off that square. Now we're going down to Paris, and we have crossed into northern France, and this is in the Flanders area. You remember the Flanders area in Belgium and northern France from World War I. And that is a little cemetery in the foreground. I just snapped this from the bus as it was passing by. And down in Paris, then this is the old railroad station, and that was our hotel. We stayed in a room of the old railroad station right across the Seine River from the Louvre. And yes, they pronounce it Louvre. And that is the Louvre across the way. And here is another one of the outside of it from the other side. I think, yeah, I had a couple of pictures of it. And then this is Winged Victory. Now, Winged Victory was found on an island in the Aegean Sea